Hello everyone, this is Sila here. I'm here in Estonia and I'm going to discuss with you guys why Canadian men should stop using dating apps. Dating apps, as I've discussed before, are super common everywhere in the world at this point. There's so many of them out there. I think two of the biggest names in Western countries is Tinder and Bumble, and there's many other apps out there. Instagram actually, according to sources, has become also very popular as a kind of sort of dating app in certain cases for guys that have big followings. But as we have seen, dating apps so have just proliferated the world, and I think they've just caused a lot of destruction, and Canada is no exception. I wouldn't be surprised in the near future if countries started imposing kind of restrictions on these apps and maybe putting some kind of levying some kind of law in place. I think though they would more likely impose a law if it were to start impacting both genders in a negative way. As we know right now, it mostly just impacts one gender in a negative way, and we certainly know which gender that is. Canada though is a terrible case study when it comes to dating apps, and they obviously were one of the early adopters of these apps, just like USA and places like Germany and Australia, and they've become a very popular app. As we know, dating apps are one of the most popular apps out there of any type of app in the App Store. And what's happened though is that in the early days, in their infancy, dating apps actually served some purpose. They benefited a larger segment of guys out there, but present day it's not like this, and they've significantly declined in terms of their functionality and their actual usefulness. They've basically become a zero-sum game for many guys out there, and I think if anything, they've actually become very toxic. They actually do a lot of destruction and harm to the society as a whole. They significantly elevate the SMV of ladies, and they also greatly inflate their egos. These are two very bad things happening at the same time. The other thing also is that for most guys, they just simply don't work. We see this 95-5 situation with dating app culture, and it's like where like 5% of the guys get 95% of the interest, and then all the other guys get almost no interest or just the scraps. It's very much kind of like the epitome of a lot of the global economies nowadays. It's kind of like the small echelon of elites, or the plutocrats as they're often called, control most of the resources in society. And it's the same thing with the dating apps. Honestly, just terrible. It's absolutely despicable what it has turned society into. And Canada is one place so where guys can step away and say, I'm done with this. I am not feeding into this ridiculous culture, which is what it is. It's just so stupid, honestly, and absurd when I see kind of the expectations, what guys have to bring to the table. We see these crazy stories where the guy has to have like the helicopter in the private jet, and often it's fake. Also, this isn't even legitimate. These guys don't actually own a private jet. They don't own a helicopter. This is all made up. It's kind of like that old show of MTV Cribs. Older guys may remember this show. These guys, they were like rap artists. There were maybe a few athletes, but a lot of them were musicians, and they would supposedly own like these $5, $10, $20 million mansions, and often they didn't actually own it, and it would actually be someone else that owned it. Sometimes they were just simply renting this house, and the show portrayed it like they owned the house, but they really didn't. And it was kind of the same mindset. Oh, look at me, I'm Mr. Hotshot musician here making all this money, and you're living in your little one-bedroom apartment. Kind of the same mindset. We saw this, of course, with Bazarian and his recent downfall with his corporation. We see the same trend though with the dating apps. We will see these guys, and they have to flex with their helicopters and private jets, and they need all this blank to showcase that they supposedly have, which often they don't have, just to attract some reasonable girls. to their profiles. Otherwise, the girls will be like, nope, I'm swiping the other way. And this is the current modern day that we're living in with dating apps. It's absolutely goofy. And then all these other guys that have actually legitimate, that have real profiles, and some of these guys even have decent cars. They have maybe a Mercedes that they actually own. I know of guys that actually do own Mercedes. It's not rented, it's not leased. But, oh, this isn't good enough. The guy doesn't drive a Lambo. He doesn't drive a Ferrari. Or maybe even a Bugatti. It's just crazy, honestly, the situation that we're in now. So these gals have these just ridiculous and inflated expectations. And Canada is penultimate example of this. It's so over the top in Canada that it just simply doesn't work for most guys. We see a crazy app like Bumble that actually enables it so that the lady has to make the decision on the guy. The guy doesn't have any decision in the whole process, no control. It's the ultimate dream of these modern day cat ladies. It's just crazy, honestly. But this is where dating apps have gotten, and they obviously have huge traffic. These apps, of course, they still make massive amounts of money. They're some of the most successful apps out there, as I said before. They make a lot of money, apps like Bumble, like Tinder, and this is why I say, though, you shouldn't be paying for these apps. It's just stupid. No, it's not to say you can go onto an app. Often on Tinder, I know, you can download it and use it in your local area. You have a limit, and you can swipe for so many matches without actually having to pay. If you're opting to pay, the option to pay, it's probably not worth it, honestly. Unless you're in maybe certain cities in, like, I don't know, Russia or Ukraine, then it might be worth it, honestly. But otherwise, it's probably a waste of money. What you're really paying for is just to give girl attention. The girl that doesn't really value you, though. It's very one-sided here. The app in itself, I've mentioned this before in other videos, is ultimately about securing dates. It's about going out and possibly even finding a girlfriend. And much of the time, the app does not do this. I don't have any case studies offhand, but if I were to give an estimate, say in Canada, of the number of relationships that have been created from this app, I would say that it's less than 1%. Maybe a couple percent. I'm not certain, but it's extremely low. Now, I can tell you one thing that these apps have created is probably giving guys maybe a certain condition, we'll say here, that they don't want to receive by maybe meeting someone, going out with them, going back to their place, and then a few weeks later realizing, oh, I have something wrong with me, and then going to the doctor and finding out they maybe contracted something that I won't say here. But this obviously seems to actually be more common with the apps themselves than the actual real relationships, unfortunately. And this is, of course, one of the reasons why I would advise also not to use this app in Canada, because you don't know the kind of history that the person there has had. And they can also make up things like, oh, I'm pregnant, I want to be having a child. And you could, of course, get pinned with the child or something. And then this leads into a whole different issue. Canada is just one of those countries, though, where you can be a guy, and you can flex with great resources, have good game, have good looks, be charming, and still not be successful on this app. Guys may laugh at this, but trust me, there are guys, and they offer a very good package, and they still don't have success securing dates with decent options. And this is just the day and era we live in. We look at places like Toronto and Vancouver, and even like Manitoba. All of these places, especially Toronto or Vancouver and British Columbia, it is really, really challenging environment for dating based on the sources that I've heard. And there's also extremely high expectations on the guy that's often one-sided. And the option, the general living condition in a place like Toronto for the average young woman is really, really good. It's really optimal. And they'll probably actually have access to some of the higher earning guys in the city. In fact, if we look at like guys that play for the Maple Leafs ice hockey team, these guys probably have the same accessibility you may be competing against these same type of guys, like these pro ice hockey players or people with serious status, for the same ladies on these dating apps. And just imagine that these guys bring a lot to the table and you're going to be compared to them. And these guys will even state that it's very difficult to impress these women in Canada when it comes to the whole dating and marriage scene. It's really crazy how Canada, a lot of these women get onto these apps in Canada, just like in other countries, just to get a lot of free attention, to get a lot of praise, even to collect money in some cases. There's been many scams in many ways of guys having to send money just to get attention on these apps. And this is another big problem you see in Canada. It has nothing to do with dating at this point. It's just an attention-seeking tool. Understand too that some of these women may also have actual boyfriends in real life. Some of them also will not actually date guys on these apps. They just simply use it to feed their ego, to find really simp-like guys. But they won't go out with those guys, and this is just what it is. So you have to realize that maybe it serves a purpose, maybe it doesn't. Ask yourself the category of guy that you're in. If you think that you're in the top 5% of guys in Canada, your respective city, absolutely go for it. See what it's like. You may have a good number of options available, but if you have any doubts about where you stand on the hierarchy scale, I would avoid this app at all costs, because if anything, what it'll probably do is actually lower your sense of self-esteem and just make you feel terrible about yourself, rather than go out, find people in real life. Yeah, there's no guarantee that these women will be interested, but you could still give it a shot. You would have a better chance in face-to-face situations, especially if maybe you weren't the best looking guy or you don't have a private jet. You may actually have more chance of securing some dates this way. Not guaranteed, but it's worth a shot. So point in case here is avoid apps like this if needed. Tinder, Bumble. In many cases, it's not worth the time. If you can just build up whatever you're doing in your personal life, you could always build your Instagram profile, because often guys actually have told me that if you have a pretty ideal looking profile on Instagram, you'll actually get DM'd by girls this way. And Instagram, like I stated before, is often kind of a default Tinder at this point for Generation Z. So this is another option this is another scenario here. But this is my take on this whole situation, and give me your feedback below. Thank you.